to the retrial of a Mongols motorcycle gang member who admits he shot and killed Pomona SWAT officer Shawn Diamond back in 2014.
From killing a SWAT officer to the whole club being arrested on federal criminal charges.
The early morning arrests of 61 members of the Mongols Motorcycle gang was the biggest crackdown on motorcycle gang violence in history.
These are the most feared Mongols MC leaders ever. David Martinez's life took biggest turn when on October 28, 2014, a SWAT team raided his home in San Gabriel, California. Martinez did the unthinkable. He responded with a shotgun and killed a SWAT officer named Shawn Diamond. Diamond was a 16-year veteran of the Pomona Police Department. The shot hit him in the neck, breaking his spine. The officer was critically injured and immediately taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, he died at the hospital.
Martinez fired a shotgun at Diamond, severing his spine. Diamond died a day later.
Shooting at an officer is a serious offense, but Martinez was not new to serious offenses. He was a trusted member of the Mongols Motorcycle Club's Pomona chapter, known for handling disputes and guarding club territory. In 2014, he was under investigation for gun trafficking and narcotics. Not only did he shoot a SWAT officer, but he also tried to outplay the justice system. According to him, when the SWAT team broke through his door, he thought his own brothers, the Mongols, were coming to kill him after rumors spread that he wanted to leave club. He surrendered minutes later and claimed he never heard the police announce themselves. After 2 mistrials on murder charges, Martinez pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and assault with a firearm on a police officer. He was sentenced to 10 years, most of which he had already served.
A Mongols biker gang member who shot and killed a Pomona police officer has been sentenced to 10 years in prison, but he could get out a lot sooner. David Martinez pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in November for killing SWAT officer Shawn Diamond.
When he was released, it left both sides uneasy, because this wasn't just a shooting. It was a Mongol who fired on a SWAT team and lived to tell about it. Chapter 2. Justin Mooch Deloredo. Justin Mooch Deloredo had run Mongols chapters across Oregon, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana for nearly 15 years. He was the face of expansion and helped the Mongols break new ground overseas, even shaping the club's largest Australian chapters. Inside the Brotherhood, Mooch was old school. He was strict, loyal, but ruthless when tested. He lived the Mongol code. Family first, club forever. But like every high-ranking Mongol, his story collided with law enforcement sooner or later. The 2008 chase. In 2008, federal agents and Eugene detectives rolled up to Justin Deloredo's rural Turner home. They were investigating a bar assault tied to Mongol members. Minutes later, deputies spotted Deloredo's vehicle heading north on I-5. When they tried to follow, the highway turned into a chase as Deloredo swerved toward their unmarked car, attempting to run them off the road and calling in 2 other bikers to box them in. According to Deloredo, he didn't know they were cops. He thought it was a rival crew coming for him. The court didn't buy it. He was convicted of reckless endangerment, menacing, and reckless driving, 5 misdemeanors in total, but no felonies. He was sentenced to 1 year in jail. Here's the twist. He served just 1 day. The judge ruled that Deloredo had already spent enough time in custody during his trial to count as time served. A pre-sentence report labeled him a low-risk offender with no recent violent record. So instead of serving the full term, he walked out a day after sentencing. The rest of his punishment shifted to strict probation. Still, the court hit him with conditions that cut deep. He was banned from contacting Mongols members or wearing the patch. Legally, it severed him from the brotherhood he had built. That restriction marked the beginning of his exile. The Mongols were already facing their own internal collapse, corruption, power struggles, and shifting loyalties. Deloredo's name still carried weight, but his influence began to fade under the shadow of Ruben Doc Cavazos, the national president. The rift deepened when Cavazos accused Deloredo of turning the club into a personal business empire, using the Mongols' name for profit and power. Deloredo started speaking out, quietly at first, about the corruption spreading through the leadership. By 2010, His chapter presidency was over. The Mongols' Oregon line had lost one of its sharpest minds, from outlaw to advocate. Years later, Mooch re-emerged, not at a rally but at George Fox University, pursuing a degree in social work. He was a changed man. He wanted to turn his past into prevention, to reach the same kind of gang-affected kids he once recruited. In 2015, he faced another clash with authority. The Oregon Youth Authority cut short his unpaid internship after learning about his Mongols background. No violence, no charges, just the label. He sued the state, claiming they violated his First Amendment rights and punished him not for what he did, but for what he used to be. Since then, Deloredo has rebuilt himself from the ground up. He wrote a memoir titled The Ride of My Life, documenting his time in the Mongols and the struggle to find purpose after leaving the club. He now runs a podcast, Mondays with Mooch, where he talks about brotherhood, betrayal, and the long road out of outlaw life. To this day, he calls himself a former Mongol, but never a traitor. And maybe that's the part that still haunts the club. Chapter 3. Clifford Buckshot Lavoy.
A federal criminal complaint charges 51-year-old Clifford Lavoy of Montclair with assault resulting in serious bodily injury.
Inside Mongols territory in Southern California, Clifford Buckshot Lavoy was known as a hard man, someone trusted to remind rivals that the Mongols don't take slights lightly. But on March 4th, everything changed. Late into the night at the Firewater Bar and Grill in Ontario, Lavoy and fellow Mongols Jules Pulido sat drinking and holding court. When a member of the Mongols Motorcycle Club walked in wearing his colors, tension snapped. Lavoy confronted him, demanding respect. Words turned to violence. Lavoy grabbed and struck him. The victim broke free and tried to flee. Pulido pulled a gun and fired. The victim fell dead on the sidewalk. By the next afternoon, law enforcement had identified both men. Pulido led police on a 9-hour chase across 5 counties before crashing. Lavoy was arrested in Whittier a few days later. Now, Lavoy faces federal charges for assault in aid of racketeering, carrying a sentence of up to 20 years if convicted. He didn't pull the trigger. He played the role of the enforcer, the muscle, the man who makes sure respect is demanded and delivered. If convicted, he becomes a cautionary tale inside the Mongols. Even trusted enforcers are not untouchable when violence spirals out of control. Chapter 4. Christopher Allen Boyd. In early 2025, bikers from all over Florida descended on Daytona for Bike Week, the ritual gathering where colors mix and rival tensions crack. Among them was Christopher Allen Boyd, a 38-year-old Mongols from Lakeland, Florida. He wasn't yet known in major headlines, but that would change. On March 8th, outside a gas station in New Smyrna Beach, a confrontation exploded. Members of the Warlocks and Mongols faced off in the parking lot. The confrontation soon turned into a full-blown brawl. When the smoke cleared, multiple people were injured. Months later, under Operation Mongolian Beef, federal and state law enforcement launched a sweeping crackdown. 28 bikers were arrested, including Boyd, who was charged with aggravated rioting for participating in a coordinated act of violence. He was extradited to Volusia County to face the charges. Boyd's exact role in the chaos remains unclear. Was he following orders from chapter leaders? Was he defending his colors? Or was he simply in the wrong place when the storm broke? Investigators described the incident as a turning point for the Mongols' Florida network. If convicted, Boyd could be the spark that brings new heat onto the Mongols, a reminder that one moment of violence can expose an entire brotherhood. Chapter 5. Jared Chadwick. It was July 11th, 2020, outside a crowded restaurant in Arvada, Colorado, when the Mongols and Hells Angels went to war. No one knew it would become one of the most brutal biker clashes in recent memory. Within hours, 1 man was dead and 3 more were bleeding. Among those later named was Jared Chadwick, a 38-year-old from Davis County, Utah. Known among local Mongols in South Ogden and West Valley City, Chadwick had kept a low profile, handling business quietly and avoiding headlines. That ended when the Arvada Police Department and the FBI launched a multi-state takedown. On January 26, 2022, deputies booked Chadwick into the Davis County Jail in Farmington. The charge sheet read like a career ender: accessory to first-degree murder, aggravated robbery, racketeering, conspiracy, and violent crime enhancements. 7 of his co-defendants faced first-degree murder counts. According to police, the attack began when Mongol members targeted a group of Hell's Angels outside the bar. One of them, William Henderson, was shot dead. 2 others were gunned down and left in critical condition. When a bystander tried to help, he was beaten with a helmet and run over by a motorcycle. The injuries left him permanently crippled. By the time officers arrived, the Mongols were gone. It took 2 years, 4 states, and a web of surveillance to track them down. The coordinated arrests swept across Utah, Colorado, California, and Florida, with both the ATF and FBI leading the operation. Chadwick wasn't new to police databases. His record showed 3 misdemeanors: theft by receiving stolen property in 2004, assault in 2005, and communications fraud in 2007. But he had no felonies. Nothing that hinted he would one day be tied to a biker war. Prosecutors described Chadwick as part of the cleanup crew, not one of the trigger men, but one of those who moved fast after the shooting, clearing evidence, protecting brothers. In court, Chadwick pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence and a separate federal firearm charge in Utah. He spent 28 months in federal prison, along with 90 days in Colorado that ran concurrently. For a war that left 1 man dead and others destroyed, his time behind bars barely reached 3 years. But his name now sits in the same record as the Arvada massacre, one of the Mongols' bloodiest modern chapters. Chapter 6. Nick the Knife. Forbes. In Australia's outlaw biker world, few names carry more weight than Nick the Knife Forbes. Known as the national president of the Mongols, Forbes built his reputation on control, discipline, and intimidation. For years, he was the man other Mongols answered to. But in October 2022, the walls started closing in. It was just after midnight when Forbes stepped off a flight at Darwin Airport. Police were waiting. Within minutes, the Mongols' top man was in handcuffs. The arrest was tied to an alleged assault on a Hell's Angel member at a top-end nightclub nearly a decade earlier. The same case had been hanging over him since 2014, and he was also wanted for failing to appear in court in 2015. Forbes had flown in with his lawyer, Michael Gattenby, to surrender voluntarily. He had already notified the court that he planned to appear and told reporters he wanted to start a new chapter. At the airport, witnesses said Forbes apologized to the public watching the arrest. Inside the Darwin local court, he was charged with aggravated assault and engaging in violent conduct and was denied bail. As this unfolded, the timing could not have been worse for the police. That same week, the Mongols' national run was set to roll through the Northern Territory. Officers warned the public that large groups of bikers were heading north, riding from Alice Springs to Darwin. Police launched an operation to closely monitor Mongols' activity along the Stewart Highway. Forbes' arrest sent a message through every Mongols clubhouse in Australia. The national president was now behind bars, and the timing, right before the club's biggest annual gathering, looked deliberate. It felt like a power play by law enforcement. Later, prosecutors dropped parts of the old case, but the damage was already done. Nick the Knife Forbes built his empire on power and presence, but when he chose to walk into Darwin and surrender, it wasn't weakness. It was a strategy, a calculated move that reminded everyone he was still in control, still writing his own story. Chapter 7. Gregory Lawrence Moore. For nearly 2 years, Gregory Moore Jr. lived as a ghost. His name was tied to a massacre in Arvada, Colorado, that left 1 man dead and several others crippled. But in January 2025, the hunt ended in Florida. Police raided a Mongols clubhouse in Tampa. Inside, they found Moore, a fugitive wanted on more than a dozen charges, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, and organized crime. His arrest closed one of the last chapters of the 2020 biker war between the Mongols and the Hells Angels. That night at a Colorado roadhouse, chaos exploded. Hells Angels member William Kelly Henderson, 43, was shot dead. One of them, a local musician named Ryan McPherson, wasn't even part of either club. He had been performing at the venue when the fight broke out. Witnesses said he tried to help one of the wounded and was clubbed in the head, then run over by a motorcycle. He survived, but the injuries left him permanently disabled. The violence didn't stop there. Later that same day, 2 innocent riders were run off the road by Mongols members in what investigators described as a retaliatory chase. The operation that brought Moore down was massive. More than a dozen law enforcement agencies worked together, including the Tampa Police Department, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, and the ATF. Investigators tracked Moore's phone and vehicle to the Tampa clubhouse before storming the building. He was taken into custody without resistance and later extradited to Colorado. Gregory Lawrence Moore pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of racketeering. 35 other counts, including murder, were dismissed. Moore was sentenced to 27 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections for his role in the fatal July 2020 shootout between Hells Angels and Mongol Motorcycles gangs. To the U.S. Justice Department, the Mongols remain one of the most dangerous outlaw motorcycle clubs in America, which is violent, armed, and expanding. Chapter 8. Clinton Neil Walker. Before he joined the Mongols, Clinton Neil Walker wore a uniform for a different brotherhood. He was a firefighter, a Marine, and a former outlaw motorcycle club member. But in the summer heat of New Smyrna Beach, Florida, he became something else entirely. The man who opened fire in a gang war at a gas station. It happened outside a racetrack station on State Road 44. 2 rival clubs, the Mongols and the Warlocks, clashed in a crowd of more than 25 people. According to police, Walker was the shooter. He fired multiple rounds during the chaos, sending the crowd scattering. When officers reviewed the witness video, they could clearly see a bald man with Mongols tattoos on his neck, brandishing and firing a gun. That man was Clinton Neil Walker. When the dust settled, 2 Warlocks were down. One had been grazed in the head by a bullet. The other was struck in the back of the head with nunchucks. A bystander's vehicle was riddled with bullets. Another Mongol, Anthony Trimboli, turned up at the hospital with a gunshot wound to the stomach. He told police he had accidentally shot himself while practicing cross-drawing. Officers didn't believe it. Soon, Walker was stopped driving a Chevy Silverado minutes later on US 1 in Oak Hill. Police arrested him and impounded the truck. He was charged with inciting a riot, discharging a firearm in public, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Walker was booked into the Volusia County Jail and released on $75,000 bail the next day. Walker's name was already familiar to law enforcement. In 2018, he was fired from the Hillsborough County Fire Rescue Department after an internal investigation tied him to a violent Outlaws Motorcycle Club bar fight. Walker said he had quit the Outlaws in 2016 before joining the Mongols, but that loyalty never faded. The Mongols called the gas station shootout a misunderstanding. Police called it organized violence. To those who once knew him as a firefighter sworn to save lives, the image of Clinton Neil Walker standing in the middle of a Florida gas station, gun in hand, was something they never expected to see again. Chapter 9. Dylan Pascal. In the Tampa underworld, betrayal is the one sin that never gets forgiven. For Dylan Pascal, that rule turned deadly when a fellow biker was marked as a snitch. On the night of April 27th, 2022, Dominic Paternoster, a 46-year-old member of the Raiders Motorcycle Club.
Dominic Paternoster was found dead in his home back in April. Detectives say he was shot multiple times.
Was sitting in his Palm Harbor home. The Raiders were a feeder group for the Mongols, loyal to their hierarchy and eager to prove themselves. But that night, loyalty was the last thing on anyone's mind. Paternoster had been accused of informing on the Mongols to the local police. Hours later, he was shot to death in his recliner. When detectives arrived, they found spent shell casings beside the body. Lab results later showed Pascal's DNA on those casings. Investigators believe more than one shooter opened fire that night, using multiple guns. When Pascal was questioned 2 days later, he told detectives a story. He said he and another man brought Paternoster home from Tampa, left him sleeping in his chair, and walked out. The evidence told a different story. Detectives called it a lie meant to mask a gang execution. Pascal was charged with first-degree murder. 3 other Mongol affiliates were tied to the same case. According to Paternoster's ex-wife, she saw the bullet holes in the chair where her husband had been sitting.
I sat in the chair with the bullet holes in it, where his head would have been, for about an hour and cried my eyes out.
She spoke about the man she once knew, a father of 3 who got lost in addiction and the outlaw life. Now Pascal waits for trial, facing life in prison if convicted. Inside the Mongols, snitches are dealt with one way, and Paternoster's blood proved it. The Mongols built their empire on loyalty, violence, and fear, but there was a bitter war that pushed it all to the edge. Click on the next video to see the war that changed law enforcement forever.